Hi guys, my name is Emily. Welcome to my channel. This is my first ever YouTube video, so please excuse any cringiness, any awkwardness. I'm sure there's going to be a ton in this video, but YouTube has always been something that I've wanted to do. It's my millennial pipe dream, I guess, as cringy as that sounds. But so I'm, no time like the present. Let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see by the title, this video is about the first ransom kidnapping recorded in American history. So even though this happened in 1876, the story actually starts a few years ago when a woman named Bridget and her daughter Rebecca were going through some bins in their basement looking for some family pictures for Rebecca to use for her bridal shower invitations. So Rebecca actually found this huge wad of envelopes, and she was like to her mom, like, who were these from? Like, where did they come from? And Bridget said, they're probably love letters, no big deal. And Rebecca proceeds to open one up and actually read what it says. And in the first letter that she read, it said, Mr. Ross, be not uneasy. You son Charley Bruster, be all writ. We is got him, and no powers on earth can deliver out of our hand, sorry. So obviously these are not love letters, they are ransom letters. And Bridget is kind of like, she's mystified, like, what is going on? How are these in my basement? She gets the help of her husband, who is actually a research consultant at the University of Pennsylvania, and the two of them together find 22 letters, just similar, all saying basically the same message, all addressed to a man named Christian Ross, asking for $20,000, and they will return his son, Charley Ross. So Bridget did a quick Google search, and she actually found Christian Ross is actually a man who, his son Charley Ross was kidnapped in 1876. So she found that Christian Ross he wrote a memoir detailing the whole abduction, what happened to his son, or, these letters that were sent to him, and there were duplicates in the memoir of all the ransom notes. And Bridget and her husband compared the letters that they had found in the basement to the ransom notes in this memoir, and they were identical. So what the heck? How, after over 100 years, over a century, how are these letters turning up in her basement? Well, I actually did a little bit of reading into the memoir because I think that this whole abduction, kidnapping, ransom note thing is, story is very interesting and very heartbreaking. So I read a little bit about the father's memoir, and it just tore at my heart. It's so clear how upset Christian Ross is over losing his son, as I'm sure any parent would be. This sentence in particular, actually, I'm going to read a sentence from his memoir that actually really kind of like teared me up a little bit. So he wrote in his introduction, "The stealing of a child involves all of the sorrows of a child's death, without the relief of those hopes which first staunch the bleeding, and at least heal the wound." So obviously it's very devastating to lose your child. It's very devastating for your child to die, but to lose your child without a trace, not knowing where they are, if they're safe, if they're dead or alive, that just must be the worst. So Christian Ross actually had a couple children, and in particular he had a son named Walter Ross, who was 5 years old at the age of when the kidnapping occurred in 1874. The kidnapping occurred July 1st, 1874. So he had two sons, Walter Ross, who was 5 years old, and Charley Ross, who I think was he was 4. So a couple days before the kidnapping occurred, actually June 27th, 1874, Walter Ross came up to his father in the afternoon and said, "Hey, this man offered me and Charley a piece of candy when we were playing outside." And he showed his father Charley's piece of candy because Walter ate his already, but Charley had not. He had given it to Walter to save for later. And that's some self-control right there. Definitely couldn't do that myself. Anyway, so Walter showed the piece of candy to his father, and it was this weird, like 4-inch long, huge candy. It was like long and white and braided. And Christian was mystified. He was like, "Okay, so do you know this man who gave you the candy?" And Walter said, "No, we don't know this man." But Christian just thought that this man liked his children or liked children in general and just happened to be a friendly guy giving out candy to children. He didn't think anything of it, you know? He didn't think there were any malicious intentions behind giving, you know, his kids the candy. So he didn't think anything of it. He just warned his son Walter to be careful, to be wary of strangers, you know, to be careful of his surroundings. But, you know, he didn't think anything more of that. And the next couple of days pass. It's the morning of the kidnapping, July 1st, and Walter and Charley ask Christian, their father, for money for fireworks for the 4th of July. And Christian says, "Okay, sure, I'll give you fireworks, but let me go to the store and get sand first. I'm sorry, I'll give you money for fireworks. Let me go to the store and get sand first so you can shoot the fireworks off in the sand and it won't be so dangerous." So he drives to the wherever to get sand, and when he gets back, he's gone for a while, I guess. It takes him a long time. I guess he couldn't find a sand guy. I don't know. He had to chase down that sand guy. But he finally gets back, and he's looking for his sons. He can't find them anywhere. They're nowhere. And he finally finds like one of the house helpers and asks like, "Hey, where are my sons?" And the house helper said, "Oh, they were playing outside, but I don't know where they are." So a couple more hours pass, and I don't know, Christian, I guess, wasn't concerned, and eventually he's like, "Okay, where the heck are my sons?" He can't find them anywhere. They're not coming inside after playing. So he asks for help searching for his sons. And he actually goes on a walk himself, just around the neighborhood looking to see if maybe they wandered off or maybe they're playing at a neighbor's house. So he passes by one neighbor named Miss Kidder. And Miss Kidder flags him down and says, "Hey, are you looking for your sons, Walter and Charley?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am. Do you know where they are?" And she actually said she saw his 2 sons riding in a wagon with 2 strange men that she did not recognize. So immediately Christian starts to feel anxious about this. Like, what the heck is going on? So he heads home. His kids have still not turned up at home. He decides that he needs to go to the police in the town hall and report this. Because if he can go to the police in the town hall, they can send a telegraph then to the central office in the city. And this took place around Philadelphia, like in the northern part of Philadelphia or something. Like one of the suburbs or on the outskirts of Philadelphia. So he goes with Mr. Kidder, Miss Kidder's husband, to town hall. He starts to trek to town hall. And as he's walking to town hall, a man, Mr. Peacock, has Walter, one of his sons. And he's like, "Oh my, like, where have you been?" And Walter, it's really disturbing. So Mr. Peacock, Walter really couldn't talk at first. He was very like frightened and he didn't look right. And so Christian was like, "Okay, what happened?" So Mr. Peacock then says, "I found Walter outside the cigar shop. Like, he was just outside the shop." And so he found him. It was a suburb of Philadelphia. So it was actually in Kensington, which is a northern district of Philadelphia, on the corner of Palmer and Richmond Streets. I don't know if that really means anything, if those places are still there today. I doubt it, but... So Christian then starts asking his son Walter, "Where's Charley?" And Walter says, Why? He is all right. He is in the wagon. So Christian wound up sending Walter home and continued his journey to the police station, to town hall, so he can send a telegraph to Central Station or the central office. So once he arrives finally at town hall, he sends a telegraph off to central office, and he gets a reply that nobody has turned up a missing child. Charley is not there. Nobody knows where Charley is. And however, everyone was so dismissive. The police officers, the detectives, they were very, very dismissive. They said, Christian told them the whole story of finding Walter, of his kids being missing, and then finding Walter on the street. And the detective that was actually in charge at the time, his name was Mr. Joyce, he was like to Christian, oh, it was probably some drunk guy. He'll return the kids eventually. Like, don't worry about it. It's fine. So Christian was obviously not satisfied, and he just kept walking around. He wanted to walk all the way to central office himself to just talk to, a more experienced detective or a different police officer, somebody who will understand the severity of the situation and help him out. So basically, this is the time before Ubers, obviously, and cars, and, so he's walking all night. It takes him so long to reach the central office. He gets no answer. Again, nothing. He eventually walks home, and he waits a couple hours. He can't sleep at all, and he eventually wakes up Walter. And he says to Walter, please explain to me what happened. Like, what happened? So I actually took an excerpt from the memoir. I just took it word for word, exactly what Walter said to exactly what Christian wrote about what Walter said, just because I didn't want to leave anything out or paraphrase it. I just thought it was better if I just basically, so I have that right in front of me, so I'm going to be looking down to read it. So Walter told Christian that two men driving on the lane in a buggy had given him and his brother Charley candy on Saturday, June 27th, Monday, June 29th, and Tuesday, June 30th, and then Wednesday, July 1st. And that Charley had asked them for a ride, and would they buy him fireworks. So Charley asked for a ride and for them to buy him and his brother fireworks. And the men promised to do just that. So they drove to the top of the hill in the wagon. They turned around and then put the boys in the wagon, and Walter asked them to go to Main Street to get the firecrackers. So the man said to Walter, no, we are going to take you to Aunt Susie's. So Aunt Susie is a completely fictitious character. This has been made up. It's not a real person. So we are going to take you to Aunt Susie's, who keeps a store, and will give you a pocket full for 5 cents. So he said Charley was placed on the seat between the men, and Walter sat on the knee of the man who was not driving. He also said the men talked to them as they drove along, but more so to Charley than to Walter. And they did not talk much to each other. So the men gave them candy as they went along. And after they had gone some distance, Charley began to cry and begged to be taken home. But he was pacified by being told that, they would soon be at Aunt Susie's. So once they reached Palmer and Richmond Street, Walter was given 25 cents and directed to a cigar store next to the corner where fireworks were displayed in the window. And he was told to get firecrackers for himself and torpedoes for Charley. So he went into the store, and I guess he got out. He bought 2 packages of firecrackers and 1 package of small torpedoes, and he still had 4 cents left in his pocket. So when Walter got out of the store, once he finished making these purchases, the men had left. The men were no longer there. Charley was gone, and he tried looking up and down the street, and they were nowhere to be seen. He could not find the men, he could not find the wagon, he could not find his little brother. And he started to cry. He got really upset. He didn't know what was going on. He just wanted to go home. He's a little 5-year-old, you know. And a crowd started gathering around him. And that's when Mr. Peacock found him and kind of was on the way to bring him home. So that whole passage was basically taken out of Christian Ross's memoir. All of this information that I've gotten has been taken out of the memoir. And also this from a Smithsonian article as well. So there was a little girl who was able to confirm Walter's story as well, because she saw the men actually give Walter money to go into the cigar store. And Walter was also telling his father that the men had a bottle on the seat and would often stop the wagon to fill glasses with the liquid in the bottle, which is presumed to be alcohol. And they would drink the glasses. So Walter described the driver to be of medium size and height, full and red in the face, with a red or sandy mustache but no beard. The man had eyeglasses, a gold watch, a gold vest chain, and green sleeve buttons. The other man was described by Walter as being older, taller, heavier, with 3-inch long red whiskers and a deformed nose. He sported gold-bound spectacles and 2 rings. One was plain and the other had a red stone. The horse that was driving the buggy was dark brown with a white mark on the forehead. And the wagon itself was very old. It was painted a very dark color and had red stripes on the wheels. So 3 days after the kidnapping, July 4th, happy 4th of July to Christian, the first ransom letter appeared at Christian's store in downtown Philadelphia. So this letter had terrible grammar. It had so many errors, but it said, "You will have to pay us before you get him from us, and pay us a big cent too. If you put the cops hunting for him, you was only defeating you own end." So, very bizarre. 5 days after this first note appeared, a second note came to his store in Philadelphia. And this one said, "This is the lever that moved the rock that hides him from you. $20,000. Not $1 less. Impossible, impossible. You cannot get him without it." So just to give you an idea, in 1874, $20,000 was actually worth about $400,000 today. After those 2 notes, 20 more followed. These kidnappers were relentless. And Christian took all of these letters to the Philadelphia police. And the police kept warning him, do not pay these kidnappers because they don't want copycats. They don't want people seeing that this is a way to get money and to repeat this offense. So he never paid the ransomers, or he never paid the kidnappers. And, you know, eventually this went public, right? And chaos ensued. Parents were terrified for their children. They wanted the ransom notes to go public so they could see if their children were safe or not. And, you know, at first the authorities refused to release these letters, but they offered a $20,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of the kidnappers. And so many crazy people came out of the woodwork, dressing their kid up, pretending their kid is Charley, pretending that, you know, they found Charley. It was just absolutely awful. Like, they were really just trying to claim the reward money and, you know, give Christian Ross false hope every time. And, you know, police were also competing with detectives, you know, for the notoriety and the fame that came along with solving a huge crime. People really didn't make it about finding Charley. They really made it about their personal gain. What can they get out of this? Can they get the reward money? Can they get the notoriety and fame from solving a huge case? It was pretty awful. So a man named Gil Mosher came forward and told the New York police and Superintendent George Walling that his brother William and friend Joseph Douglas fit the description of the kidnappers. So Mr. Walling learned that William Mosher's brother-in-law, William Westervelt, was actually a former NYPD officer, so New York Police Department officer. But he was fired for graft. So Mr. Walling actually struck a deal with Mr. Westervelt, promising his job back in exchange for spying on George Walling. However, Mr. Westervelt became a double agent, so he would report to the police on Walling and report to Walling on police activities. So it didn't lead anywhere. 5 months later, Joseph Douglas and William Mosher were shot and killed while robbing a bank. So as Joseph Douglas was dying, he actually admitted to kidnapping Charley with William Mosher. But then he died right after, like seconds after, with no further explanation. So 2 more months after that, police actually charged William Westervelt with complicity in Charley's kidnapping, and he served 7 years in jail. And, you know, the saddest part of this whole thing is that Charley Ross was never seen again. However, his father approximates about 500,000 people helped in the search for Charley. 700,000 flyers were distributed, and 600 stories were told by children that were investigated. So for the rest of his life, Christian and his wife searched for their son until they both died of heart failure. However, one positive that did come out of this, so in 1875, Pennsylvania actually adopted a new state law that kidnappers are actually charged with a serious felony instead of a misdemeanor. And something called the Charley Project started as well, which is a large missing person database that compiles information about missing people. So it's all in one place. It's, you know, it helps so many people that go missing. And I think the saddest thing that I found in the memoir is that the kidnappers really tortured Charley. So right before Charley and Walter were kidnapped, Christian Ross's wife, their mother, came down with illness, so she went to the beach with their sister, with Walter and Charley's sister. And the mother promised that Charley and Walter could join them later in the summer and go down to the beach. So Charley told the kidnappers that he was really sad and that he really wanted to go home because he didn't want to miss this beach trip. He wanted to see his mom. And the kidnappers used that information against him. They sent that information in the ransom notes, and I just thought that was extremely heartbreaking to read about. So going back to Bridget and Rebecca, an archivist named Alex Bartlett was actually contacted by Bridget, and he authenticated the letters. And Bridget got these bins where the letters were located from her late grandmother, who just kept everything. However, it is still a mystery, unfortunately, as to why these letters were in her basement. And, you know, sadly, we will probably never know. We will most likely never know who these kidnappers were and where Charley is, where Charley went, what happened to Charley. And I think that's very sad, but anyway, I think that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed my first video, and stay tuned if you want to hear more crazy stories. Bye!